In the world of mixed martial arts, where champions rise and fall with the ferocity of a storm, there are moments when two forces collide in ways we've only dreamed about. Imagine the raw power of one fighter, a wrecking ball that seems unstoppable, against the precision and technique of another, a master strategist who can outthink and outmaneuver any opponent. It's a battle of the future, where the old guard faces the new, where the rules of MMA are rewritten with every second of the fight. But what happens when these two worlds collide? When two of the most talked about fighters in the sport today, Khamzat Chimaev and Islam Makhachev, square off in the octagon? Could this be the fight that defines the next generation of MMA? Khamzat Chimaev is a name that sends chills down the spine of every fighter in the division. With his relentless pace, explosive power, and an almost unnerving ability to absorb punishment, Chimaev's rise to the top has been nothing short of meteoric. He's the kind of fighter who doesn't just want to win. He wants to dominate, to break his opponents both physically and mentally. His ferocity in the cage is a rare thing to witness, and he's already become one of the most feared competitors in the UFC. But there's another fighter, a man who has quietly but steadily made his own rise. Islam Makhachev, a disciple of the great Khabib Nurmagomedov, has followed in the footsteps of his legendary mentor, bringing a level of grappling and fight IQ that's near impossible to match. Islam's calm, methodical approach to the game is a stark contrast to Khamzat's whirlwind style. Yet, both share the same burning desire to reach the pinnacle of the sport. Their paths to greatness couldn't be more different. Chimaev's explosive arrival into the UFC sent shockwaves through the MMA world. His rapid ascension, taking on anyone, anywhere, and doing so with ruthless efficiency, quickly cemented his place as one of the most exciting fighters of his generation. On the other hand, Makhachev's journey has been a quiet one, built on a foundation of discipline, relentless training, and a mastery of one of the most difficult disciplines in MMA wrestling. While Chimaev's reputation has been built on his chaos, Makhachev's has been forged through his calm, technical approach. The tension between their styles is undeniable. Chimaev thrives in chaos, feeding off the energy of his opponents as he charges forward with unstoppable force. His ability to finish fights quickly and decisively has made him a dangerous weapon inside the octagon. Islam Makhachev, however, doesn't need chaos to thrive. His game is built on control, on wearing down his opponents and making them succumb to his will through his exceptional grappling and pressure. While Khamzat looks to overwhelm, Makhachev looks to outsmart, to neutralize his opponent's game and turn the fight into his own. The question then becomes, can Chimaev impose his will on Makhachev, or will the calculated precision of Islam be the one thing that stops the wrecking ball in its tracks? As the debate rages on in gyms, in media, and in the hearts of MMA fans worldwide, one thing is clear: a showdown between these two men would be a collision of worlds. The wild unpredictability of Chimaev against the cold, clinical approach of Makhachev creates an undeniable narrative, one that has fans imagining how this epic fight might unfold. Would Chimaev's power overwhelm Makhachev's technique? Or would Makhachev's tactical genius neutralize Chimaev's aggression before it even gets started? What's even more intriguing is the future implications of this fight. MMA is in the midst of a changing landscape, with new stars rising and old legends fading into history. Chimaev and Makhachev represent the future of the sport, each bringing their own brand of mastery to the cage. Whoever emerges victorious in a fight between them could very well go on to define the next era of MMA, leaving a legacy that will shape the sport for years to come. But as fans, we can only guess how such a clash of titans would play out. Would Chimaev's brutality be enough to topple the genius of Makhachev? Or would Makhachev's calculated approach be the blueprint for defeating a fighter like Chimaev? Both men have something to prove, and the stakes have never been higher. As the UFC continues to evolve, this fight would be the perfect test to determine who truly deserves to be the face of the next generation of MMA. But the questions remain unanswered. What will happen when these two forces finally meet inside the octagon? Who will be left standing, and who will be forced to reevaluate their place in the sport? The build-up to a fight like this doesn't just come from the fighters' performances inside the cage. It comes from the stories that surround them, the history they carry, and the expectations placed on their shoulders. Khamzat Chimaev wasn't just another prospect. His arrival in the UFC was nothing short of a spectacle. In a world where fighters often take years to climb the ranks, Chimaev did the unthinkable. He knocked out opponents in seconds, submitting others in the blink of an eye. His ability to dominate seemed almost preordained, and fans quickly gravitated to his fiery persona. Every time Chimaev stepped into the octagon, it was as if the world was watching something raw, untamed, a force of nature ready to tear through the division. But his brashness and boldness didn't always sit well with everyone. There were whispers about his motivations. Was he truly the future of the sport, or was he just another flash in the pan? Many doubted him at first. The UFC's spotlight was a heavy burden, and Chimaev's aggression sometimes raised eyebrows. He didn't just fight. He fought to prove something: his worth, his dominance, his very existence in the top tier of the sport. People could talk all they wanted about his dominant performances, but the question remained: could he keep it up? Could the wrecking ball that had crushed everything in its path maintain that level of intensity as he faced bigger, more skilled opponents? Then, there was Islam Makhachev, whose rise was a slow burn but just as intense in its own way. While Chimaev was running through opponents like a wildfire, Makhachev was the patient sniper, quietly working his way up the ranks, earning his place with each victory. Islam's style couldn't have been more different from Chimaev's, but his strategy was equally effective. Every aspect of his game was calculated, from his flawless takedowns to his devastating ground control. He wasn't interested in flashy knockouts or mind-bending submissions. Islam's game was about suffocating his opponent's will, breaking them down in ways they never expected. It was a style that commanded respect, but it was also a style that didn't always grab the headlines the way Chimaev's did. What made Makhachev's story even more intriguing was the legacy that followed him. As the heir apparent to Khabib Nurmagomedov's throne, Makhachev had big shoes to fill. Khabib's reign as lightweight champion was built on a foundation of invincibility. His dominance inside the cage was so complete that fans almost began to think he was untouchable. Islam, in many ways, inherited Khabib's mantle, not just his technical prowess, but the heavy weight of expectations. Everyone in the MMA world looked at Makhachev and wondered, can he carry on the legacy of Khabib, or will he falter under the pressure? His journey was always going to be different from Khabib's. Khabib was a monster, an undefeated champion who left behind a trail of destruction. Islam, however, had to carve his own identity to prove that he was not just a copycat but a fighter in his own right. Despite the contrasting paths of these two warriors, there was one undeniable truth: both were on a collision course with destiny. But it wasn't just the public's anticipation that made this potential fight so compelling. Behind the scenes, the fighters themselves had their own motivations, their own internal struggles. For Chimaev, the fight was about validation. He had been labeled an unstoppable force, but the truth was, he was still on the hunt for his true test. People were beginning to ask, can Chimaev handle a fighter with the kind of technique and composure that Makhachev possesses? His desire to prove that he could dominate in any environment, that he could take on anyone, anywhere, was a driving force. But what if Makhachev turned out to be the one fighter who could outthink him, who could weather the storm and expose the cracks in his game. Makhachev, on the other hand, didn't need validation. What he needed was respect, something that had always eluded him in the shadow of Khabib. He had been patiently working his way to the top, never asking for handouts, never demanding attention. Yet, despite his consistent performances, there were always those who doubted him, who saw him as just a lesser version of Khabib. A fight against Chimaev was the perfect chance to prove that he was no mere imitator. Beating Chimaev wouldn't just be a win. It would be the moment that solidified Makhachev as a true champion, someone capable of carrying the torch for his generation. But there was also the sense that neither fighter truly understood what was at stake. Khamzat's raw aggression and desire to prove himself had brought him this far. But could it carry him through a battle of wits against someone like Islam? And for Makhachev, would his technical brilliance be enough to overcome the pure chaos that Chimaev brought to every fight? Fans, analysts, and even the fighters themselves couldn't predict how the clash would play out. It was as if both men were on a collision course, yet neither knew the full extent of the challenge they would face. Even more intriguing was the silence around their rivalry. Both Chimaev and Makhachev were often quiet, not eager to engage in the drama that seemed to follow other fighters. This wasn't about talking trash or hyping up the fight with inflammatory words. Instead, it was a simmering tension that built slowly, steadily, until it reached the boiling point. Their styles and personalities had created the perfect storm, but it was clear that neither fighter was interested in engaging in theatrics. They wanted the fight, but they wanted it on their terms. There was something both intimidating and magnetic about their reserved nature. They weren't trying to sell a fight, they were simply preparing for war. So, what would happen if this fight ever became a reality? Would Chimaev's fire burn too brightly for Makhachev's calculated strategy to contain? Or would Makhachev's cool, collected approach become the perfect antidote to Chimaev's overwhelming intensity? As the world waited with bated breath, one thing was certain. The moment these two forces finally collided, the world of MMA would never be the same again. But that's a story for another time, because for now, the tension remains unresolved, and the question of who will truly dominate the next generation of MMA lingers in the air. As the anticipation for the showdown between Khamzat Chimaev and Islam Makhachev continues to build, the tension around this potential clash becomes almost unbearable. Each passing fight for both men only adds layers to the mystery of what would happen if they were ever to meet inside the octagon. Khamzat continues to steamroll his opponents, his reputation growing with every victory, yet something shifts in his demeanor. It's as if he's beginning to feel the weight of expectations that have steadily mounted as fans and analysts alike have crowned him the future of the sport. Chimaev, once untouchable, begins to show signs of frustration. He's fighting harder, but in a different way. He's pressing too much, overcommitting at times, trying to deliver the kind of knockout he's known for, and yet there's a growing sense that his ferocity is beginning to wear on him. In interviews, he talks about the pressure of being labeled unstoppable, yet there's a subtle unease in his words, an edge to his voice that wasn't there before. Makhachev, meanwhile, seems to be coming into his own. With each fight, his confidence grows. His grappling has become almost surgical, dissecting his opponents with precision, his control over every aspect of the fight tightening like a vice. But even as he rises, there's an unsettling undercurrent. Something isn't quite right. Islam has long lived under the shadow of Khabib, a shadow that, despite his success, still looms large. The media is still obsessed with comparing him to the undefeated former champion, constantly measuring Makhachev's skill set against his mentors. It's a comparison that Islam has never quite shaken off, and it begins to take a mental toll. At one point, Makhachev mentions in passing how it would feel to finally step out from that shadow, to prove that he is his own man, his own fighter, and that he doesn't need to be seen as just another extension of Khabib's legacy. But in his eyes, there's a quiet fire, a hunger that goes beyond proving his skill. He wants to leave his mark, not just on MMA, but on the entire history of the sport. Then, in a turn that no one could have predicted, an unexpected twist sends shockwaves through the MMA community. In a highly anticipated press conference just days before their scheduled fight, the two men face off for the first time in person. Fans and media have been eagerly awaiting this moment, ready to see if the simmering tension between Chimaev and Makhachev will finally boil over into a heated confrontation. However, the moment is anything but what they expected. Chimaev, usually the fiery, outspoken one, stands quietly, his demeanor eerily calm. His usual intensity is replaced by an almost unsettling composure, and for the first time, it's as if he's holding something back, something deep within him that no one can quite grasp. Makhachev, ever the calm and collected strategist, maintains his usual stoicism. But as the two fighters lock eyes, there's an undeniable shift in the atmosphere, an invisible weight in the room that only the fighters seem to feel. What happens next is unexpected and explosive. Just as the press conference nears its end, an unplanned comment from Chimaev shakes everything to its core. He speaks about the fight, not in terms of his own dominance, but with a tone of reflection, almost as if he's already accepted that something bigger than himself is at play. "This isn't about me," he says, his words heavy with meaning. "It's about the sport. It's about who takes us into the next era of MMA." The statement catches everyone off guard, including Makhachev. The calm, calculated Makhachev's expression falters for the briefest moment, as if a switch has been flipped. For the first time, he seems unsure, like the weight of Chimaev's words has penetrated deep into his psyche. The audience is stunned into silence. The energy in the room shifts from one of rivalry to something much more complex. Chimaev's words seem to suggest that this fight isn't just a fight for the title, for dominance, or even for personal glory. This is a fight for the future of the sport itself, a battle to see who will lead MMA into its next phase. Makhachev, despite his composed nature, cannot hide the flicker of uncertainty that flashes across his face. His mind, so often calm and calculating, now begins to race. What if Chimaev is right? What if this fight is bigger than either of them could have imagined? Suddenly, the fight that seemed so inevitable, so black and white, is thrust into a new light. What had once seemed like a clash of styles, Chimaev's unrelenting aggression against Makhachev's technical brilliance now feels like the beginning of a deeper conflict. A battle not just for supremacy inside the cage, but for the very identity of MMA in the coming years. Both fighters are no longer simply battling for a title or legacy. They are wrestling with something far more profound: the responsibility of being the one who will define what the sport will look like moving forward. With each passing day, the stakes rise higher. The press conference incident becomes the talk of the town, shifting the narrative from just a fight between two champions to a battle for the soul of MMA. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, both Chimaev and Makhachev are dealing with their own internal battles. Chimaev begins to question if his earlier ferocity was all there was to him, or if there is more depth to his game, more nuance that could be the key to overcoming Makhachev's calm and composed style. The idea of being the face of the next generation is now deeply ingrained in his mind, but can he evolve beyond the wild fighter he has always been? Makhachev, for his part, starts to doubt his own path. The weight of Chimaev's words, combined with the relentless comparisons to Khabib, now feels suffocating. The question looms large in his mind. Can he truly break free from the shadow of the man who raised him, or will he always be seen as an echo of Khabib's greatness? As the day of the fight draws closer, the air is thick with the realization that this contest is no longer just about winning or losing, it's about defining who they are and where the sport is heading. The tension is palpable, and the world waits, on edge, for the inevitable clash. But with every passing day, it becomes clearer that this fight is about more than just Chimaev versus Makhachev. It's about the very future of MMA itself. The night of the fight arrives, and the atmosphere in the arena is unlike anything the sport has ever seen. The crowd roars with anticipation, every fan eager to witness the collision of two of the most talked-about fighters in recent history. Khamzat Chimaev and Islam Makhachev stand across from each other in the octagon, their eyes locked with a mixture of respect, rivalry, and something deeper, something neither fighter can quite articulate. The tension is almost unbearable. This is more than just a fight. It's a moment that will shape the future of mixed martial arts. From the very first bell, it's clear that this is going to be unlike anything anyone has ever seen. Chimaev comes out fast, just as everyone expected. His explosive energy fills the cage, his relentless aggression pushing Makhachev backward. With each exchange, Chimaev looks more like the unstoppable force that fans have come to know him as. But Makhachev's composure is unmatched. He absorbs the pressure, never panicking, always calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Every time Chimaev lands a shot, Islam seems to find a way to make it less impactful, turning what could be a dangerous moment into an opportunity to gain control. As the first round progresses, the fight begins to take on a rhythm. Chimaev pushes forward with his usual fury, his fists flying and his takedown attempts relentless. Makhachev counters with precision, his grappling on full display as he neutralizes Chimaev's chaos with his calm, technical approach. But just as it seems like Makhachev is in control, the momentum shifts in the blink of an eye. Chimaev, fueled by a deep, almost primal drive, catches Makhachev with a brutal right hand, a strike that visibly rocks Islam. For a moment, the world holds its breath. Could this be it? Could this be the moment that Chimaev's unyielding power finally breaks through Makhachev's tactical brilliance? But Makhachev, with an almost supernatural calmness, weathers the storm. His resilience is astounding. He recovers quickly, never losing his focus, and soon the tide turns once again. Makhachev brings the fight to the ground, a realm where he feels most at home. Chimaev's explosiveness is diminished as Islam's suffocating grappling takes hold. Every time Chimaev tries to scramble, Makhachev is there, maintaining position, controlling the fight with an iron grip. The dynamic between them becomes clearer than ever. Chimaev is the storm, but Makhachev is the mountain, unmovable and unyielding. In the second round, the fight intensifies. Chimaev, frustrated by his inability to break Makhachev's defense, begins to tire. His earlier intensity begins to fade, and the cracks in his game become more apparent. Makhachev, on the other hand, is as composed as ever, using his superior fight IQ to pick apart Chimaev's weaknesses. He expertly shifts between striking and grappling, constantly keeping Chimaev on the back foot. For every hard punch Chimaev lands, Makhachev has an answer, whether it's a quick takedown, a clinch against the cage, or an expertly timed submission attempt. The fight is becoming a masterclass in MMA strategy, and the audience can sense it. Makhachev is pulling away, step by step, minute by minute. But just when it seems like Makhachev is on the verge of securing victory, an unexpected twist sends shockwaves through the crowd. Chimaev, against all odds, finds a second wind. With a burst of energy that no one saw coming, he launches himself forward with a barrage of punches that push Makhachev into a defensive position. For a split second, the mountain begins to falter. In that moment, it's anyone's fight. Chimaev, sensing a rare opening, presses forward, attempting to land a game-changing strike. The crowd is on its feet, watching in stunned silence. Could Chimaev still pull off the impossible? But Makhachev, displaying a level of poise that can only be described as legendary, executes a perfect counter, locking in a submission with flawless technique. It happens so quickly that Chimaev, despite his strength and determination, has no time to react. In an instant, Islam Makhachev has the victory in his grasp, his submission tightening with the precision of a surgeon. Chimaev struggles, his gas tank depleted, his will slowly being worn down. The ref steps in, and it's over. Makhachev wins. The arena erupts, but it's not just a roar of excitement, it's a gasp of awe. The fight, which had so many twists and turns, had reached its unexpected conclusion. Makhachev stands tall, but this victory feels different. This isn't just about winning a title or a fight. It's about proving something far more profound. He wasn't just Khabib's protege, he was his own fighter, capable of navigating the chaos and carving his own path. Makhachev's triumph over Chimaev signals the dawn of a new era in MMA 1, where control, precision, and strategy hold sway over raw aggression and chaos. As the crowd cheers, Makhachev takes a moment, his expression a mix of relief and reflection. He has not only defeated a fierce opponent but has also solidified his place in history. But there's something more beneath the surface, something the world didn't know. While Chimaev may have been seen as the future of MMA, Makhachev's victory proves that sometimes the quiet, patient approach can be the most devastating weapon of all. The story of their fight, with all its unexpected turns, will go down as one of the defining moments in the sport's history. But it's also a reminder of something deeper. In the pursuit of greatness, it's not just about the fight itself. It's about how you evolve, how you adapt, and how you face your greatest challenges head-on, no matter what the world expects of you. For Makhachev, that moment has arrived, and it's clear that he's ready to lead MMA into the future. As the dust settles, one final question lingers in the air. What's next for Chimaev? What will he take away from this defeat? The world may never know, but one thing is certain: his journey is far from over. The future of MMA, as always, remains in motion, and the next chapter is already waiting to be written.